I woke up in the dead of night, the room drowning in silence. At first, I thought I had only stirred from a dream, but as my mind cleared, I realized something was terribly wrong. My chest felt heavy, as if an unseen weight pressed down on me. My limbs refused to move no matter how much I willed them. Panic surged inside me, and that was when the truth dawned. I was awake, but my body wasn't responding. I was trapped in the cruel grip of sleep paralysis. My eyes, however, were open. The faint glow of the streetlight outside filtered through the curtains, dimly illuminating my bedroom. Shadows stretched across the walls, distorting in strange ways. I told myself it was just the tricks of half-sleep, but deep down, a part of me knew there was something else lurking. My gaze shifted toward the corner of the room, and that was when I saw it. A tall, shadowy figure stood at the foot of my bed. Its presence was unnatural, its form darker than the shadows around it, as if it absorbed all light. It had no face, just a hollow void where its eyes should have been. Yet somehow, I could feel its gaze burning into me, a suffocating awareness that made my heart pound faster. I tried to scream, to call out for help, but my lips wouldn't part. My voice was buried somewhere deep, smothered by an unseen force. The figure didn't move at first, just stood there, watching. Seconds stretched into what felt like hours, and my terror only grew. My mind screamed at my body to wake, to run, to do anything, but all I could do was lie there, helpless, as dread pooled in my chest. Then, it moved. Slowly, deliberately, its long limbs began to bend. I heard the faintest creaking sound, like old wood snapping under pressure, as its arms and legs twisted at unnatural angles. My breath caught in my throat as it dropped lower, crawling toward me. The way it moved was wrong, its joints bent backward, its fingers clawing at the air as it dragged itself closer. The shadow figure didn't walk, it crept, slithering like some half-human, half-animal thing. My eyes widened, but I couldn't even squeeze them shut. I was forced to watch as it crept across the floor, inch by inch, until it was beside my bed. My heart hammered violently, threatening to burst, as its long arm reached upward. The air grew colder, my skin prickled, and every instinct in me screamed that this thing wasn't just a dream, it was real. Its hand, long and skeletal, reached for my chest. When it touched me, I felt it. Not like a dream, not like a figment of imagination. It was icy, pressing down hard, sinking through my skin as though it was trying to claw its way inside me. I wanted to thrash, to push it away, but I remained trapped in my own body. My mind was awake, my soul screaming, but my flesh betrayed me. As the shadow pressed harder, I felt my breath shorten. Each inhale became shallow, ragged. It leaned closer, its faceless void lowering toward me. Though it had no eyes, no mouth, I felt it staring, whispering silently into my mind. A deep, guttural noise began to fill the room, low at first, then growing louder. It wasn't coming from outside. It was vibrating inside my skull. Tears welled in my eyes, but even they refused to fall. I was a prisoner in my own body, a victim to whatever this thing was. My vision blurred, and I thought for certain I was going to suffocate, that this nightmare was going to end with me never waking up again. Then, without warning, I blinked. Just one, small blink. When my eyes opened, the shadow was gone. The weight lifted from my chest. My lungs expanded as air rushed back into me. I gasped, the sound breaking the heavy silence of the room. I could move again. My fingers twitched, my arms shook as I clutched the blanket like a lifeline. But even as I sat up, panting, the room still felt wrong. The shadows still loomed longer than they should have. The air still carried a lingering chill. I dared not look toward the corner again, afraid that I'd find it still standing there, waiting. I told myself it was just sleep paralysis, a trick of the mind. That's what people always say. Yet, as I calmed my breathing, I noticed something that made my blood freeze all over again. My chest burned. I pulled back the collar of my shirt, and there, faint but unmistakable, were long, dark marks across my skin. Marks that looked like claw scratches. I lay back down, my body trembling, and pulled the blanket over my head. But even with my eyes shut tight, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was still watching me. That the shadow hadn't vanished at all, it had just stepped back into the darkness, waiting for the next time my body would betray me. And deep down, I knew this wasn't the last night it would come crawling. I woke in the dark with a heaviness pinning me down. My mind was awake, screaming at my body to move, but not a single muscle obeyed. My eyes rolled frantically, scanning the dim outlines of my room. The faint glow of the clock told me it was just after 3 in the morning, that cursed hour when nightmares tend to slip into reality. I tried to convince myself it was just sleep paralysis again, something I had felt before, but the weight on my chest told me this was different. Something was there. At first, I thought it was just the usual suffocating pressure. Then I felt it shift. Something cold and bony pressed against me, heavier than any blanket. My heart stuttered as my eyes darted down. There she was, an old woman hunched over my chest, her frail body crouched low, her face inches from mine. Her eyes were milky white, her skin sagging in folds like melted wax. Wisps of tangled gray hair hung around her face, and her lips, cracked and purple, moved as if whispering words I couldn't hear. The smell hit me next. It wasn't just foul, it was the stench of rot, of soil and decay, like something dug up from a shallow grave. My stomach lurched, but I couldn't gag, couldn't scream, couldn't even flinch. She leaned closer, her withered hands clutching my shoulders with a strength that defied her frail frame. Her nails were long and yellowed, digging into my skin, sharp enough to send a sting of pain through the paralysis. Her whisper grew louder, and though I couldn't understand the words, I felt their meaning deep in my bones. They were not of any language I knew, but they carried weight, a chant filled with menace. The syllables dripped like venom, each one vibrating through my chest. My breath grew shallow, my lungs tightening as though she was drawing the air out of me with every sound. I tried to close my eyes, to shut her out, but even that simple act was stolen from me. I was forced to stare into her hollow, deathly face. Her mouth opened wider, too wide, and from her throat came a rasping hiss that felt like it was seeping straight into my soul. My ears rang with the sound, and tears gathered at the corners of my eyes. Then, she moved closer. Her cracked lips brushed against my ear, her breath damp and rancid as she whispered with perfect clarity, "You belong to me." The words struck me like a knife. My heart pounded violently, threatening to break free of my chest. I tried to scream, tried to shove her off, but my body remained a corpse beneath her touch. Her face twisted into something even more grotesque, her smile stretching unnaturally wide, revealing teeth that were sharp and blackened, jagged like broken glass. Her tongue, long and gray, flicked across her lips as she watched me struggle. The pressure on my chest grew heavier. My ribs groaned under the force, every breath a shallow gasp. I felt the sting of her nails digging deeper, the warmth of blood trickling down my chest beneath her grip. The room seemed to shrink around us, the walls closing in, the air thickening. My vision blurred at the edges, tunneling as darkness pressed in. I thought for certain she was going to crush the life out of me. Then came the laugh. It was low at first, a wheezing cackle that built into something loud and shrill, filling the entire room. It didn't come from her mouth alone, it echoed from everywhere, bouncing off the walls, vibrating inside my skull. My chest heaved as she leaned closer still, her face almost touching mine. I could see every crack, every crevice in her skin, every rotten tooth in her gaping mouth. And then, she vanished. The pressure lifted all at once. My chest rose in a desperate gasp, my lungs filling with air like I had been drowning. I jerked upward, my body finally free, drenched in sweat. My room was silent again, the shadows still, the smell of decay gone. My chest burned where her nails had gripped me. Hesitant, I pulled up my shirt, and froze. There were marks, 4 long, dark welts across my skin, red and angry as if something had clawed me. My breath caught in my throat. I stumbled out of bed, flicking on the light, trying to convince myself it was just scratches from the blanket or my own nails during sleep. But deep down, I knew the truth. They were hers. She had touched me. I didn't sleep the rest of that night. I sat in the corner of the room with the lights on, my eyes darting to every shadow that shifted. Every creak of the floor, every sigh of the wind outside made my heart jump. Even when dawn came, the fear didn't leave. I carried it with me, the image of her face burned into my mind. And later, when I finally dozed off from exhaustion in broad daylight, I woke with a start, my chest heavy again. My body wouldn't move, my eyes opened in terror, and there she was, already waiting for me. Her voice echoed in my skull once more. "You belong to me." The first thing I noticed was the silence. Not the usual quiet of night, but something deeper, suffocating, as if the whole world had been muted. My eyes flickered open, but the moment I tried to move, dread wrapped around me like chains. My body wouldn't respond. My arms, my legs, even the smallest twitch of a finger, nothing. My breath hitched in my throat. Sleep paralysis. I had felt it before, but this night was different. This night, something else was in the room. The doorway was only a few feet away from my bed, and though the darkness covered most of it, I could see the outline of a figure standing there. A man, tall and unmoving, his frame too solid to be mistaken for a trick of the eyes. He wore a wide-brimmed hat that cast his face in shadow, the kind of old-fashioned hat you'd see in dusty black and white photographs. My heart thudded violently, every instinct screaming danger, yet I couldn't even shut my eyes to block him out. He didn't move at first. He simply stood there, still as a statue, watching. The brim of his hat tilted downward, hiding whatever lay beneath. My breathing grew uneven. I tried to reason with myself. Maybe it was just a coat hanging in the doorway, or my half-dreaming mind conjuring shapes from the dark. But then, he stepped forward. The sound hit me like a gunshot. Heavy boots striking the floor, echoing in the silence of my room. One step, then another, each one deliberate, slow, dragging out the horror as he drew closer. My eyes widened, and tears stung, but I couldn't blink. I couldn't scream. My body was a coffin, my mind trapped inside. The man in the hat moved with unnatural steadiness. He didn't sway, didn't falter. His presence filled the room, the air thickening until each breath felt like it scraped my throat. Shadows seemed to bend toward him, as though pulled by some invisible force. My chest heaved in shallow bursts, struggling against the invisible weight pressing me down. He reached the foot of my bed. The brim of his hat still covered his face, but I could feel his gaze, cold, piercing, far heavier than sight alone. My heart pounded so hard I thought it would explode. I prayed silently, begging my body to wake, to move, to fight back, but nothing changed. He took another step, and the bed creaked as if the weight of his presence was enough to shift the room itself. Finally, he leaned forward. Slowly, the brim of his hat tilted upward, and my blood turned to ice. Where a face should have been, there was only bone. A hollow skull, its eye sockets black pits that swallowed the light, its grin stretched impossibly wide. The teeth glistened, not like dry bone but wet, sharp, almost alive. The skull tilted, studying me like prey. I tried to scream. I tried to beg. Nothing. His bony grin widened, the sound of grinding teeth filling the air, though his jaw never moved. My body convulsed in terror, though it remained perfectly still, a prisoner under his gaze. His hollow sockets seemed to pulse with some dark energy, pulling me deeper, holding me captive. He raised one gloved hand and reached toward me. I felt it before it touched me, the cold, like the grave, seeping into the room. His hand hovered over my chest, and suddenly I couldn't breathe. My lungs locked, my chest burned. His presence was suffocating me, stealing the very life from my body. Darkness crept at the edges of my vision, and for a moment I thought it would be easier to just let go. But then, with a blink, everything shifted. My eyes closed for a split second, and when they opened, he was gone. The weight lifted, air rushed back into my lungs in a ragged gasp. My chest rose violently as I coughed, pulling oxygen back into my body. I could move again, my fingers twitching, my arms jerking as if breaking free from invisible restraints. I sat up, drenched in sweat, clutching my blanket like a lifeline. My room was still, the doorway empty. Just shadows, just silence. My mind screamed at me to believe it was a dream, a hallucination conjured by paralysis. That was the explanation, the only explanation. But as I sat there, trembling, I couldn't shake the feeling that the room hadn't fully rid itself of him. The air was still heavy. The shadows still seemed too deep. I tried to calm down, to steady my breathing, but when I glanced at the doorway again, my heart stopped. The brim of a hat, just faintly, barely outlined by the dim glow of the streetlight outside. Standing there, still waiting, I blinked hard, rubbed my eyes, convinced it would vanish. When I looked again, the doorway was empty. Relief flooded through me, but it was fragile, hollow. I lay back down, too exhausted to sit up any longer, but I couldn't close my eyes without seeing him again. That skull, that grin, those empty sockets burned into my mind. Sleep finally came, though it was restless, fractured by fear. When morning light filtered through the curtains, I felt a false sense of safety. The daylight always brings that illusion, that nothing can hurt you in the sun. But as I pulled myself from bed and went to the mirror, I froze. On my chest, just above my heart, was the faint imprint of a hand. Large, gloved, the shape unmistakable. My breath caught, my stomach twisting. It wasn't a dream, he had touched me, and as the memory of those heavy footsteps echoed again in my ears, one thought clawed its way into my mind, refusing to let go. The man in the hat hadn't left. He was still waiting, watching, and the next time I couldn't move, he would finish what he started. I woke to a strange sensation crawling along my skin. At first, I thought it was the brush of a blanket or the tickle of a dream, but then the realization hit me like ice water. I couldn't move. My arms were locked at my sides, my legs stiff and unresponsive. My chest rose shallowly, like someone was holding me down. My mind screamed that I was awake, but my body betrayed me. I was trapped in the awful prison of sleep paralysis once again. The feeling returned, stronger this time. Movement, small, quick, deliberate. Something was under the covers with me. My eyes darted downward, and though the room was dark, I could make out faint shapes shifting beneath the blanket. The mattress dipped, ever so slightly, as though tiny feet were pressing against it. My breath caught. This wasn't a dream. Something was really there. The sensation grew worse. Cold hands brushed against my legs, skittering upward. Not one hand, not two, but many, dozens. Their fingers were small, sharp, and icy, like skeletal claws tugging at my skin. They gripped my ankles, my calves, pulling, dragging me downward toward the foot of the bed. Panic flared violently inside me, but my body stayed rigid, paralyzed. My heart thundered against my ribs, the only part of me that could still move. I forced my eyes wider, straining to see through the gloom. That was when I saw them. Tiny, faceless figures crawling up from beneath the blanket, swarming over my body. They were no bigger than children, their forms humanoid but incomplete, their heads smooth with no eyes, no mouth. Their skin was pale and waxy, glistening faintly in the dim light. They moved in jerks and spasms, twitching unnaturally as they clambered higher. Their hands dug into me, sharp nails biting into my flesh through the thin fabric of my clothes. I wanted to scream, to thrash, but all I could do was watch in helpless terror as more of them emerged. They crawled out from beneath the bed, slipping through the shadows, climbing the mattress like insects. The weight of them pressed down on me, dozens of tiny bodies crawling, pulling, scratching. The whispers began then, low at first, like a faint breeze, but soon growing into a chorus of hushed voices. I couldn't understand the words, but they slithered into my ears, filling my head with a maddening static. The whispers layered over each other, rising in urgency, chanting in tones that chilled my blood. My vision blurred with tears, and still I couldn't close my eyes. One of the faceless things climbed onto my chest, its head tilting as if studying me. Though it had no eyes, I felt its gaze burn into me, a suffocating awareness that made my stomach churn. It leaned closer, pressing its cold, damp skin against my neck. Its fingers gripped my jaw, forcing my head still, as though I could move anyway. The whispers swelled into screams. My body burned with terror. Every nerve screamed to fight, to run, but my body was a corpse, frozen beneath the weight of countless crawling things. More of them clambered up, their cold hands sliding beneath the collar of my shirt, clawing at my chest. I felt the sting of nails, the drag of fingers pulling at my skin. My lungs seized, every breath shorter, shallower, as though they were trying to steal the air from me. I tried to pray, to shout, to call for help, but my voice was gone. The only sound was theirs, their whispers, their screams, their claws scratching against my skin. The faceless one on my chest tilted its head again, and though it had no mouth, the sound that came from it was a shriek so piercing, so unnatural, it rattled through my bones. The others answered, their whispers becoming a deafening chorus. The room seemed to vibrate with their voices, the shadows on the walls twisting and stretching as if alive. My eyes darted wildly, desperate for escape, but everywhere I looked, more of them crawled. From the floor, from the corners, from the ceiling, they were endless, pouring toward me like a tide. The one on my chest pressed its head against mine, its featureless face cold and slick. For a moment, I thought it was trying to sink into me, to merge with my body. The air thickened, my lungs screaming, my heart pounding so violently I thought it might burst. Darkness tunneled my vision, the swarm pressing harder, the whispers screaming louder. I was going to die. I was sure of it. And then, silence. Just as suddenly as it began, it ended. The weight lifted, the figures vanished, the whispers stopped, my chest expanded in a desperate gasp, my lungs flooding with air. I bolted upright, every muscle trembling as if I had just broken chains. The blanket lay flat against me, undisturbed. My room was still, empty. But the pain was real. I looked down and saw faint red marks across my legs, scratches where their claws had dug in. My skin burned with the memory of their touch. My stomach knotted, my hands shaking as I gripped the edge of the bed. I told myself it was just sleep paralysis, just my mind conjuring horrors in the dark. That was the only answer that made sense. And yet, when I looked toward the shadows under the bed, my blood froze. There, in the faint glow of the streetlight outside, I saw movement. Dozens of small, pale hands, retreating slowly into the darkness. I couldn't breathe, I couldn't look away. My heart hammered as the last hand slipped into shadow, leaving only the empty space beneath the bed. I didn't sleep the rest of the night. I couldn't, because deep down, I knew they hadn't disappeared. They were waiting, waiting for me to fall still again. Waiting for the next time my body betrayed me. And when it happens, I know they'll come crawling back.